if you want to stay status quo and just grind it out and be the CEO and COO, nothing wrong with that. I have a lot of friends that own several hundred doors and they've never had a team and they're doing just fine, and that's good for them, right? But if you want to scale, if you want to continue to grow, you want to take your business from, $250,000 to $500,000, from $500,000 to $1 million, to $1 million to $2 million. If you want to continue to do that, the only way you can do that is with systems, processes, and the most important thing, people.
Leon, thank you for joining me for our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host, Matt Camp, head of partnerships for DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine a spotlight on industry experts like yourself to hear about your inspiring stories and educate our audience on the lessons that you've learned over the years. So today, really excited to welcome on our friend Leon Barnes. You're the director of member results at Collective Genius, which is a mastermind that we've been in for years. And it truly is some of the top people in the real estate investing world all in one room. So we've loved it. I know the group in general helps you scale your real estate investing business, helps you build a team, helps you bring in more leads, helps you raise capital, network with peers. So there are just so many different ways you can get value out of it. And beyond that, I mean, I know you personally have done, it looked like over 320 rehabs under your own belt. So you can definitely speak to not just Collective Genius, but real estate investing as a whole. So welcome on, Leon.
Thank you for having me, Matt. And first and foremost, thank you for saying I get a spotlight and I'm an industry expert. Much appreciated, my friend. How much do I owe you?
Hey man, you truly earn that. And anything that anytime we bring on somebody like yourself, that somebody, especially, we were just talking before this, how genuine you guys are and how that rubs off on this entire group. It makes me really, really excited to kind of just hear your perspective on life. Yeah. So,
I appreciate you saying that. As I said before we started the show today, I said that a lot of times people will get on a call with me via Zoom and I can tell they're like, is this guy seriously nice and actually want to help me, or is he conning me? I can't quite tell. But as we talked about before, I'm originally from Kansas. So it's what you see is what you get with me.
Yeah, I mean, our whole team's from the Midwest originally too, the co-founders and all of that. So I think we get along pretty well there. But maybe to start with, could you tell our audience more about your journey, how you got into real estate, and you can start there. We'd love to hear about your background a little bit more.
Yeah, when I tell my story, it sounds like I'm like 60 years old, but really I'm in my mid 40s. But I started really, really young, working full time while I was in college. I was working full time, going to school full time, and interning 20 hours a week because I was the next big thing on ESPN. I was a sports broadcast journalism major. That I spent 5.5 years actually doing that after college, and realized that my dream of getting to the ESPN was one that was going to take a few years. And I just wasn't patient enough at that time. And like a lot of people that get into real estate investing, I was like, man, I can make a lot more money doing something in sales. And so I left sports broadcasting and went into sales for 11 years. I started off with advertising sales, business to business. I worked my way up into management, corporate ladder, as a lot of people are making that move. Did that for 11 years, left corporate 11 years in as a regional manager of the entire state of Hawaii, which I'm probably the only person to ever leave Hawaii back to Kansas without military orders. Somebody should check my brain on that one. But I went to work for a real estate investor. That's how I got into real estate investing. I was a COO. I had executive level experience, took a chance and developed a team and stayed in that organization for 5 years before I decided to move on and do my own. So we still have a real estate investing business that we're growing ourselves, but this is my main day-to-day. Collective Genius it took me 40 years to really truly know where I should be and what my calling is. And this is what I was meant to do on this planet. I love this organization and the people that are within it. And frankly, the people that are in it ultimately help businesses continue to grow and scale. And the go-giver nature of this group is it's infectious. And it's one that I've wanted to be a part of from the very first day I joined as a member.
Yeah. And I mean, getting involved with the group is it's pretty obvious that this is truly what you were meant to do. Like you can see that in your role, and you're great at what you do, man. So I
I
want to
appreciate
say
that.
we appreciate you over here. Before getting into the CG side, which I definitely want to focus on, can you talk a little bit more on the real estate investing side, more about especially when you first got into it, just because a lot of our community might be just getting rolling or just doing those first couple of deals under their belt. Like, I'd love to hear about the lessons you learned among those first kind of, few deals that you did.
Yeah, as real estate investors are people that are making that jump. Some people that I talk to that this is all they've ever done is real estate from 18 or 16 years old, and whenever they could get a license, maybe that was their first start. I took the different approach of going, the corporate side first. And in making that transition, for my personal story, having 11 years of sales management experience, where I had teams of 25 plus sales reps working different regions of each state that I was in charge of. I relied on that experience. Sometimes when I talk to people and they're making that transition, I'm like, rely on what you're good at. I was really good at hiring, managing, developing. My people enjoyed working for me because I would hold them accountable, make them more money, but at the same time, I was fair, And so what I was really good at is relationships. So I started really getting after relationships with raising capital, managing people, and bringing on and making our team better. And so that's what I started out with. I didn't have any real estate experience. And back then, it wasn't that long ago, but so much has changed on the education side with podcasts. There was no real estate disruptors in 2013, or there was no deal machines that I could, quickly ads and leverage some of these companies out there, and also the podcast. There was only a couple podcasts that were actually available back then. And I just listened to everything that I could and read every book I could get my hands on, because my learning curve wasn't business acumen. It wasn't leading teams. It wasn't selling. It was, I didn't know real estate investing. I needed to figure that out. So I had to make a 6-month learning curve, had to, bring that down to a 30-day or 60-day kind of learning curve. That part of it, I picked up really quickly, but I relied on my strengths out of the gates.
Yeah. And going through that transition, can you kind of talk about how CG's evolved over the years as well? And I know before this, we were just talking about CG Select, which is a newer program for you guys. Maybe talk about the history of the organization like that a little bit too.
Yeah, so I'm so grateful and honored to be a part of this organization, and so happy that Jason Medley kind of fell into it, frankly. When he first started, he'll tell you that. It's almost, in fact, I know you're going to have him on at a later date. It's been around for almost 12 years. It's always leaned toward the elite side. And that transition of Jason was always been in education and lending. Found that the best way to share ideas is to bring people together. Mastermind concept has been around for 100 years, but it didn't exist in the real estate investing space. But Jason never wanted to work with new investors out of the gates. That there was coaching for that. So elite investors really didn't have a platform to get together. And so I'm so thankful that he started almost 12 years ago. And in that time frame, I came on board in this position a little over 3 years ago. Always wanted to be a part of it beyond just being a member, because of the go-giver nature of this organization. And that starts top down. Jason is as good as a human being you'll ever meet, and is always looking at connecting. He and I are very similar, and that's why it's worked at a very high level. But one of the things I kept giving him feedback on is, we have a lot of people that are full-time investors that are doing anywhere between 25 and 75 transactions a year, but they weren't quite qualifying for our elite group. Our premier group is what we call it today. And so it allowed us, when we started looking at that individual that wasn't quite ready for our premier group, some of them we were putting in, and we noticed that they just weren't gaining traction. If you're in a room, Matt, with someone that is doing 300 deals a year and you're doing 50, there's a massive gap between what you're doing and what your needs are, your challenges today, and that person's challenges. And so it's hard to really gain traction and develop a relationship with someone that business is that much bigger than yours. Not to say that you can't learn some things, but you're going to gain traction with someone that's at 50. If you're at 50, gain traction with someone that's doing 70 or 80. And that's really when we came up with the concept for CG Select, which is our group that started in January of this year. And it was really there's a difference between running a real estate investing business as a professional, and you've been in the business 5 to 10 years, if not more. That individual is running a real estate investing business. Someone that's been in the business for 1 to 3 years is doing about 25 to 75 transactions a year. They're a real estate investor. They don't have the core pillars of business down yet. And so we really focus on, obviously, the network. That's the first and foremost. But the reason that we started Select was there's a lot of professional investors out there that are doing between 25 and 75 transactions a year, needed a home, and really we wanted to help them focus on the business acumen, sales, marketing, systems, process, people, financials. These are all the big things from a standpoint of taking your business of being a flipper of paper or a flipper of assets to running a flipping business. There's a major difference between the two. And I'm very thankful that I finally talked Jason into starting that group in January. And the response has been amazing. We've already had 3 meetings this year. We do training calls in between. So I'm thankful, and I'm happy to report that we took the culture from CG Premier, cut a little piece of that out, and put it right over into Select, and it's grown and blossomed into a very similar go-giving culture.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely see. I mean, we have plenty of DealMachine members who you might see on our YouTube channel. Like Ryan Hayward was one of them that we just talked about. Ryan, I know he's been a rock star within your CG Select group.
2-time belt winner. For those that don't know, he's been to 2 meetings, and he's been voted. He in each one of his hot seat rooms, which is where members do presentations. 2 times he's been to meetings, and both times he has had the best presentation, which comes with a kind of a WWE style discount double check belt that everyone wins. So Ryan has been able to take back to Missouri with him 2 times the belt for best presentation. And a lot of his success is thanks to DealMachine. That's how we were introduced from you guys. And it's a win-win for both sides, especially for Ryan. And quick note, Ryan grew up about 12 miles from where I'm originally from. So he's been a great addition. It's a perfect example. He was doing over that 25 to 75 threshold, but really needed help building out his team, building out his systems and his processes. And that's a perfect example of somebody that had enough transactions, but would get lost in a group where people have an average of 20 employees, because he had maybe 1 or 2 at the time, if that.
Yeah. And so look up, shout out to Ryan Haywood there. Definitely, we'll try to link to his social media and whatnot too. But people like that. I mean, I know our audience definitely has a good number of investors who, like you said, they would fall in that investor bucket. They are getting some traction. They're doing they're doing a good number of transactions now, but they're still very much in the implementer seat, and they're still very much, in that constant hustle. Whereas they need to build a team, to build a structure around a business, around investing, and step in from implementer to leader and building that team. So is there, I mean, obviously that's a very, very broad subject. The whole group was created around that, but are there a few kind of lower hanging fruit pieces of advice or lessons that you can share with our audience today on how to start to go through that transition?
Well, the first thing I would say is, let's say someone that's listening to this is, they're just making that transition and they're grinding. There's going to be grind that comes with this. Your first 5 years in this business, you're going to have to sit in many seats. See, your org chart is going to have your name in every box. And the goal is to get your name out of the boxes of the things that you hate doing the most first. Those are the ones that you should focus on building out today. The best advice I can give is building out the process for the next person that's going to sit in that box on that org chart that you're looking to replace yourself. So if you hate doing transaction coordination, that should be a role that today you are making a process of. So when someone does come in that seat, you have whether it's a Google Doc or in a platform like Asana or one of those softwares that you use for day-to-day activities, I would be putting down from step A to Z of exactly what you're doing, because those are the first positions that you should look to hire. You could not, if you want to stay status quo and just grind it out and be the CEO and COO, nothing wrong with that. I have a lot of friends that own several hundred doors and they've never had a team and they're doing just fine, and that's good for them, right? But if you want to scale, if you want to continue to grow, you want to take your business from, $250,000 to $500,000, from $500,000 to $1 million, to $1 million to $2 million. If you want to continue to do that, the only way you can do that is with systems, processes, and the most important thing, people. And so the first steps you take to bringing people in and them understanding their role and seeing that you're serious about onboarding of that person, that goes a long way. If they step down and they step into that role and they have a complete process, videos, they have a complete process written out of exactly what they should be doing every single step of the way, that goes a long way for your long-term scalability.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think, you guys do a phenomenal job. I've heard you speak in the past on kind of the 4 areas that CG was really focused on helping investors. I'd say, building that team, like you talked about, that's one of them. Again, scaling, like that comes with part of it, lead generation, and then capital. Those are 4 that I've seen you speak on in the past, and you kind of touched on each of those things here today. But can you maybe speak on, I know, the whole goal of creating, a network like that is to help you learn from peers, learn from each other. But even in your own personal life, it sounds like mentorship and finding a mentor and having peers to be able to network with has gone a really long way for yourself. Can you speak on the value behind that and why it's so important to find that person and how to go about doing that?
Time. It's all about time. If you have a mentor or you're in a peer-to-peer group of people that have done the things that you're trying to do, sometimes as human beings, not even speaking to business, but if you head on a journey and you don't have a roadmap of where you're exactly going, you can figure it out more than likely. But the amount of time that it takes you to figure out and make those mistakes, you're better off. What if I could find someone that's been there and done that can give me a roadmap and show me exactly how to do it? And instead of a 6-month learning curve, it's now a 30-day learning curve. The importance of being around like-minded individuals, first and foremost, beyond just the roadmap, it's also when you're going down this journey in this path of entrepreneurship, especially as a real estate investor, no one understands your problems more than other real estate investors. Somebody in your family, unless they're in the business, friends, they won't get you anymore. The problems that you're having can only be answered by fellow real estate investors. And the great thing about a group, a mastermind group, is that you get people from around the country that you can see that your problems are the same from one state to the next, but that person may have a solution for you on a specific issue, and you may in return have something to help them with. It's imperative that if you're going to do this business, that you get around people that have done it, because there's some major mistakes that can be made in this business, some big, huge mistakes legally, all kinds of different issues that could come up. But it really suppresses time when you get into peer-to-peer groups like a Collective Genius or a CG Select. You just take it you can quickly see growth. I'll give my own story. When we first joined Collective Genius in 2015, we had just qualified. We did 54 flips in the year, and we had just barely gotten in. And I remember that first meeting, there was one takeaway that led to us for the next year thereafter, we did 72 transactions. That may not seem like a lot, but when you're flipping versus wholesaling, our profit margins were much higher. That was a massive, massive deal for us, that it just took hearing that from someone else that was doing quadruple the deal flow that we were doing, that
Mhm.
all we had to do was just this one little tweak. And each time we would just try to add one new thing from each meeting. It's imperative.
Yeah, and I know every time every time we come out of those, you have a whole. It's easy to take pages of notes just because of the people you're surrounded with, and then the caliber of information you're getting from them is tough to match. So
The key thing though,
yeah,
there, Matt, the key thing is that you take those notes and you actually execute and
yes,
implement those ideas. That's crucial because, there's a lot of visionary ideas that come through peer-to-peer group like a CG Select. But at the end of the day, there's two differences between a CG Select investor and a CG Premier investor. Do you know what that is?
go for it.
Okay, so the first difference is just time. Okay, it's just time. It's the CG Select investor is a 1 to 4 year type of investor, usually more like trending more towards 2. They generally have a business that's in that 500 to $1 million of gross profit. And what they're doing today, the blocking and tackling that they're doing of scale, it's just a matter of time. It's age difference. You got a 30-year-old versus a 45-year-old on the average, right? So that's one difference. The other one is execution. Everyone thinks there's all these new ideas of secret sauce. I've got to steal this secret sauce. I've got this, I've got that. At the end of the day, the difference is just the amount of execution that one is doing versus the other. And that's probably the difference between an investor that is under 25 and the person that's in a CG Select that's doing between 25 and 75. It's just a difference of execution, of taking something, applying it, and executing at a high level, rinse and repeat. That's the only difference between some of your listeners, that may be sitting there right now doing one deal a month and they're like, gosh, I can't get to 2. What do I need to do? And usually it boils down to having the right connections and taking those connections and leveraging them and executing them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great reminder. I mean, and you're right. Like, hey, there's so much information out there. There's so many different ways to just get information like that. But it's what you do with that and how you act on it. That's what's going to separate you. So.
Oh, Matt, this you just that reminded me that I can't get off here without saying this. The amount of resources that are available for people getting into or trying to scale. The amount of resources. CG Select didn't exist a year ago for members that are doing 25 to 75 transactions. That didn't exist. So if you were doing 30, you couldn't get into CG to be a part of that network, right? But beyond that, there's a lot of free resources. There are resources like DealMachine. Like I drove for dollars many days on my own, frankly, and the platform that you guys offer with data and being able to push a button and direct mail, that stuff didn't exist, 10 years ago. So the only way, I hate to say it this way, but really at the end of the day, if you're not scaling and growing, it's not because the information isn't there. It's that you're not taking advantage of it and utilizing it to help you continue to grow.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's a great note to end on. I really, really appreciate your time, man. This has been fantastic. So,
Matt, I appreciate you having me, man. Anytime. We're big fans of DealMachine. We love having you guys as members, and it's one of those symbiotic relationships. You guys have great investors you send our way, and vice versa.
Yeah, of course. Can you tell people how to get more involved with you guys, and if they're listening to this, how to get in contact?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that you should do is, we didn't have a lot of time to go in depth on the Collective Genius, but the first thing you should do is, if you're interested, you want to learn more, just head over to our website, thecollectivegenius.com. A lot of people put in just Collective Genius and it doesn't go there, but it's THE, thecollectivegenius.com. Check that out. If this sounds like something that would be a good fit for you and you're doing. If you're not doing 25 transactions, but you're close, or you're doing 25 transactions and you have a high margin, just apply through our website. It comes directly to me, and we will handle it from there. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the Collective Genius. We love what you guys do, and it's a great relationship between the two companies.
Yeah, of course. And obviously anyone can reach out to us directly too, to hear more about our experience. And we can tell you, how all the best ways to be able to fully leverage your network. So Leon, thanks again so much for being on.
Anytime. Thanks for the time, Matt.
Yeah. And to everyone watching, this is Matt Camp with DealMachine, and happy deal finding.